could you please give a very warm welcome to our next speaker, Andrew Murray, who's Chief of Staff, Head of the Administration of Unite the Union, member of the TUC General Council, but also the founding chair of the Stop the War Coalition, and served in that capacity for the first 10 years of our existence, and it also has done a phenomenal amount to build the anti-war movement in this country. Please welcome Andrew Murray.
Thank you very much indeed, Jeremy, and welcome to all of you at this tremendous meeting. There is an enormous queue outside trying to get in. I was stuck in that queue for a time, and I was thinking, by the time I get to the front of this queue, maybe the Chilcot report would have been published. As if. Let me start by reading a bit to you from Time magazine, the latest issue of Time magazine, in a course of an article about the position following the massacres in Paris. So what's to be done? The list of failed solutions seems to grow longer by the week. Large-scale military invasions? Nope. Trillion-dollar nation-building efforts? That's Time speak. Nope. Capturing, possibly torturing, even killing senior leaders? Nope. Though many of these efforts continue to some degree, none of them have produced the results their authors intended. Well, ain't that the truth? Here we are in the 13th year of the War on Terror. 13th year still. A war that has laid waste to a huge swathe of the planet, from West Africa to South Asia, has destroyed states, has killed hundreds of thousands and probably millions, has displaced certainly millions, has impoverished peoples across the planet, has poisoned community relations and civil liberties even where the war has not directly bitten. It has produced the torture of Guantanamo, now been graphically revealed in testimony in The Guardian this week, the torture of Abu Ghraib. It has been fought by armies, drones, spies, police, torturers, and now it appears they're saying to no avail. I think it was Napoleon Bonaparte's chief of police who said after a particularly ill-judged execution, "This is worse than a crime, it is a blunder." And that cannot be our view. The crimes are much worse than the blunders, but we are in a position now where the dangers facing the world are greater than they were at the outset of this exercise. And I guess the tremendous attendance of this meeting tonight is testimony to the growing awareness of that. It's been a monumental failure, and it was ostensibly set out at the beginning to tackle one terrorist organisation holed up in one state, Afghanistan. We now have a situation where, as predicted at the time, I remember George saying these very things 13 years ago, Hydra-headed, it has multiplied now across the world, as Seamus has said, as a result, as a direct consequence of the policies followed by the American, British and other governments. And if you look at this litany, it's important to say one thing. Of course, we condemn the barbarism of the attacks in Paris, the attacks on journalists and the hideous anti-Semitic attacks. Just in case anyone from the Daily Mail is here, I will say that again. They sometimes get this wrong, it's irritating for me and expensive for them. We condemn the attacks in Paris unreservedly. But we also need to say that the barbarism we condemn in Paris is minute compared to the barbarism wrought by imperialism across the planet in the last 13 years, and we must condemn that barbarism. There is a sad lesson we have to relearn from the attacks in Paris, and it needs bringing home again and again. Wars are no longer over there. They are no longer the wars of the neo-colonialist dreams, where an obliging army of Mahdi-led Islamists advances across the sands, be mown down by the Gatling gun, and no one hears anything about it until the report is published in the Times 3 or 4 weeks later. The wars in Palestine have their echo in Paris. What happens in Baghdad will happen in Britain. That has to be understood. We cannot think that you can draw a quarantine zone around the wars we are fighting. A solution somewhere has to be a solution everywhere. And this crisis will not be solved by bombing, by invasions, by new acts of aggression, nor will it be solved by pressure, racist pressure on the Muslim community in Britain, in France, or anywhere else. As famous Milne said, the present situation is entirely a consequence of Western policy in quite specific ways. The great pundits and panjandrums of Western foreign policy say terrorism flourishes in failed states. So what have they done? Failed one state after another, torn down or contributed to the tearing down of one functioning state after another. Syria, Libya, longer ago Iraq. It's not a matter of Saddam Hussein, a matter of the destruction of Iraqi society and the state. And then ISIS flourishes. Elsewhere, Al-Qaeda flourishes. The wars and the suppression of the democratic movements in Egypt, in Bahrain, less celebrated, less well known, in Kuwait and in Jordan, at every turn supported by Western governments. These are the timber that fuels the rise of organisations like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and it is our policy that is doing it. And then we get surprised that we get what could be called blowback. David Cameron, William Hague, they were saying the main problem in the Middle East is the Assad regime. The Assad regime must be brought down by all means possible. Some misguided youths across Europe go off to give effect to that policy. No sooner than they do so, than they're arrested or they're threatened with arrest. The farce is compounded when, in my own part of London, now ISIS is demonised as the main enemy we have to fight. A young Kurdish woman proposed to take herself off to the north of Syria to fight ISIS, and she's been arrested. The worst thing you can do is try and support British foreign policy, it seems, as you immediately get incarcerated on return. So, what is to be done? That is the question that is asked in all good faith by many people now. The list of things that must be done by Britain, the British government, is a list of negatives, and I think unashamedly so. It must stop invading sovereign states that pose no threat to our country at all. It must stop bombing at the behest of the American government. It must stop writing blank cheques for Israel and its oppression of the Palestinian people. It must stop supporting Saudi Arabia, the hotbed of reactionary theocracy in the Middle East, and the other Gulf dictatorships. And it must stop the relentless Muslim baiting here and abroad. What we must do is to stop doing what we have been doing and do nothing else. Because this is already an endless war. It didn't even begin 13 years ago. In the Middle East, we have intervened against democracy in Iran in the 1950s. We've intervened against Nasserism, against Baathism, against communism, against Gaddafiism, against Islamism. The common theme is the intervening to suppress and subdue regions and a peoples that want by one means or another to find the independence and the dignity that we take for granted here. So all our demands must be for our government to do less, and we can make no apology for that. The world is a very dangerous place. We could hold a similar meeting on the problems in the Ukraine, caused in large part by the relentless effort to expand NATO, about the dangers in the Far East with the movement of American military resources into a very volatile region. But I think the main thing to assert today, loud and clear, is that the greatest danger the world faces is not terrorism, it is imperialism, and when we deal with the greater problem, the lesser one will start to evaporate. Thank you.